What's going on, family? It's Brother Coasty at IALLG.com, and we are always building bridges within to explore the world without. Today's topic is all about forgiveness, forgiving yourself first and foremost, right? And why? Why do we need to forgive ourselves, right? Why do we need to go through this healing process? I talked to a few people, and when I talk about healing and getting real with yourself and understanding kind of how life works and how it can advance. A lot of the times healing is questioned or it's downplayed. People don't realize the deeper importance of actually healing and really what healing can look like for you. A lot of us were born or raised in a family that really hit a lot on negative reinforcement, right? And so we're gonna dive down this rabbit hole for just a moment. What is negative reinforcement? One, we have to understand what reinforcement is. Reinforcement is congratulating or continuing. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe reinforcement. It is the maintaining of a certain behavioral pattern. That's what I think of when I think of reinforcement. So it's maintaining a behavioral pattern. So when we think of positive reinforcement, we are positively reinforcing a certain behavioral pattern. Negative reinforcement is not is doing the opposite. So it's taking away a certain behavioral pattern, or it's attempting to degrade it. And the best way we could think of this, in a simpler way, when we're talking about positive reinforcement, we are highlighting and focusing on things that people are doing that are getting them where we would like them to go, or what we subscribe to as good, right? So making good grades in school, positive reinforcement, congratulations, good job. Negative reinforcement is when we are focusing on what we believe somebody shouldn't do to stop that behavior. So kids are running around, stop running. That's negative reinforcement, right? It's simply positive and negative enforcement is a focus on the behavioral pattern that we either want to encourage or discourage. This is a very important understanding because this shows us where our attention goes. There's always two ways to handle a situation. There's always more than one way to skin a cat. And so when in understanding this, we have to recognize how our parents raised us, positive or negative reinforcement, how that influences how we see the world today. If your parents were heavy on negative reinforcement, like a lot of our parents are, there's no fault to them because a lot of the times we just don't know what we don't know. You don't know what you don't know. That's just the fact of life. So a lot of the times our parents were raising us with negative reinforcement. And what this does is it kind of causes this, I think the word is a neurosis, but it causes a pattern in the mind that you basically are encouraged to punish or receive punishment. I know it sounds backwards, but just follow along for a second. If your parents didn't congratulate you or hype up your accomplishments or even validate them, and you were punished for any time you did anything that was less than perfect, you got yelled at for not running, not keeping things perfectly clean, you were always criticized, you did your best effort, but they noticed what you didn't have or what you were missing. It might be something along the lines of, hey, mom, dad, I made an 85 on my test. Why didn't you get 100? You get what I'm saying? Those kind of things. And sometimes it's very direct negative reinforcement. Not, why don't you get 100? It's like, why don't you do anything right? You need to pick up or I'm going to whoop you. It's these things that our parents are using to get us to not do certain actions. And while it is helpful to a degree, it has a lot heavier toll when it comes to the detriments or harming factors. So if your parents always basically punished you for not doing things that were perfect, we have to recognize what kind of view we have on life, whether or not we are aware of it or not. One of the biggest ways that you can figure this out is if you begin to punish yourself for having to learn lessons. This is important, family. And I really want to hit on this today. Like, I want us to dive in a little bit deeper today on this very important topic. And it's you have to stop punishing yourself for having to learn lessons. I wrote it on my board. That's why I'm looking at it. But don't punish yourself for having to learn lessons. And a lot of the times, as children, and what children all are, what we're doing is we're entered into a whole new world, a whole new universe, whole new realm, and we're trying to make sense of it all, right? But oftentimes our parents punish us for us not knowing stuff, you know? Like, you make a mistake as a kid and your parents get on you, and maybe they don't even recognize it, but they always get on you every time you don't know something. And then, that begins to form an internalization that we are less than, or that we're stupid, or that we're slow, or that we're supposed to know everything, but we don't. So we think that there's something wrong with us. And this happens over time, and you'll see that you punish yourself when you have to learn lessons. When before I go down this other route, I got to let you know, sometimes it takes you a few times to learn a lesson. Sometimes you hit your head a few times. Sometimes you got to touch the stove twice. Like, it is what it is. Don't beat yourself up for your learning process. People will try to make you feel less than, or like they know what's best and they're perfect. And look, the answer is nobody is perfect. We're always striving for perfection, but ain't nobody here perfect, and nobody gets a perfect score on life. Everybody messes up. Everybody has mistakes. Everybody has to restart a few times. And whether or not you restart 10 times, 2 times, 1 time, or a million times, it doesn't make you any better or any worse than anybody else. You have to stop punishing yourself for having to learn lessons, because you repeat the lesson until you learn it. That's it. That's simple. That's the whole purpose for the lesson, so that you can learn it. And if you begin to punish yourself because you actually had to repeat something a few times, you're in for a rude awakening in life in general. Look, no matter who you see that may have this facade or this mask of being perfect, they're not perfect. And if they appear perfect and they act perfect, I'm gonna let you know it took them some time to get there. It took a lot of trial and error. It took a lot of practice. It took a lot of energy and effort and equity, sweat equity. They had to put in the work until they retrained themselves to do certain things. And I'm gonna let you know, if your emphasis is on knowing everything, if your emphasis is on not having to learn lessons because you think you should already know it, family, you gotta reframe the mind. You gotta reconfigure the mind. This is so important. Like it's so fascinating when people believe that they are not going to have to learn lessons in life. You have to learn them, and you have to go through it, right? You don't punish yourself for having to learn. You embrace yourself. Look, we're healing, y'all. Everybody is healing. Like, I can't stress this enough. We're all healing right now. Life dealt us hands, and that hand was already kind of jacked up from the get-go, because the deck that we're playing with is full of missing cards, right? So this is trauma that we're talking about. Our families were traumatized. Well, your parents were traumatized most likely by their parents or an experience in their life. And before that, they were traumatized by an experience or their parents themselves or something else. Look, most people do not put enough emphasis on healing themselves. They don't even recognize that is something they have to heal from. See, it's a trauma that we don't recognize trauma. One more time, it's a trauma that we don't recognize trauma. The fact that you believe that you are perfect and you won't make mistakes is a trauma response. It's something that was embedded in you and to a degree beat in you or punished in you by your parents. They told you that you're supposed to know everything, and if you didn't know everything, you got punished until you learned it. Like, and now in your mind, you think you're supposed to know everything. And in your mind, if you don't know everything, you should be punished because something's wrong with you. And that demands action. That demands discipline. Because somewhere along the way, your discipline is lacking. That's why you have to repeat these lessons. And while that is a way of viewing those things, I would say the more appropriate response or the more sustainable response to those kind of things is simply showing yourself grace and acceptance and growing. One more time, growing through your adversity, growing through the things that you experience, and understanding that you're experiencing those things so that you can learn more. And with that knowledge or with that information, you can now translate it into you can translate that information to knowledge, and then you can transform that knowledge into wisdom. But the lessons that you got to repeat, those are all about learning. That's all they are. It's just learning. And again, depending on how life gives you the lesson or your strengths and your own weaknesses, it may take you a bit. Do not punish yourself. Instead, show yourself grace, mercy, love, acceptance, compassion. Be gentle with yourself. Know that we have years of uncovering and rediscovering and re-engineering and transformation that we have to go through, and we're only at the beginning of this process. We're only at the beginning of this process. So just be patient with yourself and show yourself true love, true compassion. But that's really what I want to talk to you about today. It's all about, don't punish yourself for having to learn lessons. Punishing is pretty barbaric. I know people confuse punishment with discipline, or they think they're the same, and it's not. You don't need to be punishing people all the time. You establish boundaries. You enforce your boundaries. And that's it. You don't got to punish nobody for the things that they did. Life does that for you. When somebody does something wrong to you, they're basically putting out their own punishment. People put out their own punishment by being rude, messed up, jacked up, or just malicious in nature, malicious in intent. That's nothing that you need to worry yourself about or focus on. And especially when it comes to yourself. So you can discipline yourself, but I'm telling you, the best form of discipline is loose. I know it sounds backwards. I know it does. But be loose with yourself. Allow yourself to make mistakes. Allow yourself to mess up and just learn. Make it a habit to learn, then apply. Set standards for yourself, of course, but if you fall below those standards, just know that you have the power to bring yourself back into congruence, back into balance with those standards. That's it, family. I just want to share those nuggets with you. I just want to share that word with you. It's just been on my heart. It was on my heart for a while. I just didn't speak on it yet. But that's it, family. Be patient with yourself. Love yourself, and promise you life will unfold a lot better that way. This is Brother Coasty at IALLG.com. We are always building bridges within to explore the world without. Peace.